Christopher, what's happening?
Going on, bro? How are you?
Not too bad. Nice early morning for us, early morning podcast.
Got a Sunday on the go here.
Very good. What's on for today?
So me and Emily just went and had a coffee this morning, and yeah, obviously we squeezed this in. We're supposed to have the tilers in to fix up the bathroom, which is getting renovated at the moment. But then training legs. What about you?
Nah, fuck all. I just woke up, had a coffee, had a shower,
I had to get you up early this morning, bro,
having
didn't I?
another coffee, getting a bit of golf in today with Ricky, actually.
Oh yeah, bro. Did you get your clubs?
No, I'm gonna get them today.
Or did Ricky get
Well,
his clubs?
while I'm there. He's got his clubs now.
Oh, I can't wait to see him swing like a fucking baby
All
giraffe.
the, all the gear, no idea, bro. It's the best. I love it.
Bro,
Both
can
are.
you take a photo of him with his clubs? Oh, does he have a glove? I'm
Yeah,
sure
he's
he's
got a
wearing.
glove. He does. He's got a
Oh,
white glove.
God.
It's the funniest. He's the best, bro. So I'm gonna do that. We're gonna have some lunch after that. Just chill, man. Yeah, bro. Tell us about the wedding.
Yeah, well, obviously you came up for that, and it was awesome. So it was obviously at Sandstone Point. The weather was perfect. The day went, pretty much exactly as we hoped. Um, so yeah, super sunny. We even had a bit of a punt the morning of, won a bit of money, just as the groomsmen were sort of getting ready. Then yeah, we obviously had the reception, cut the cake, took heaps of photos, and then cruised down to Byron Bay for about 4 or 5 days and chilled down there at a resort called Elements. So if you're ever in Byron Bay, definitely recommend checking out Elements. It's like where all the influencers sort of stay. I think that's how Emily
Oh,
found it in the
wow.
first place. But yeah, like multiple pools, like you can
Just like a
order
resort or something.
like a resort. Yeah, we're just sipping cocktails by the pool for like 4 days. It's a rough. And then on the way back home, my tires were obviously on zero.
Hmm.
Uh, and then we obviously had that flat tire and you had to come pick me up. So I've got 4 new tires on my car now, bro. It's looking real good.
Oh, that's so good. Oh, dude, it was a sick weekend, man.
That
I
was
had
Noosa.
so much fun. So good catching up with you guys. I fucking love coming down there, dude.
Yeah. Are you moving up, bro? Is that the plan?
Eventually, yeah, it's gonna be in my plans for the future, my retirement plans.
How was Noosa? Did you like it up there?
Yeah, it was sick. It was actually pretty good. It was big, like it's pretty quiet up there. Like this is not the first time I've been, it's the second time I've been. Um, but it was just there's not like heaps to do up there if it's not so hot,
Yeah, yeah.
other than like eat and have coffee and stuff like that. So um it was good, but if the weather was a little bit better, it would have opened up a few more options for us. But we just chilled. Went to the pool one day, had dinner at a few like nice restaurants and shit like that.
Yeah,
And then
bro.
I got
Tracking your food
sick.
while you're up there?
Sorry?
Tracking your food while you're up there?
No, I wasn't actually. I wasn't at all. But it wasn't too bad. Like I wasn't actually eating that bad to be honest. I've
Oh,
just
that's what we touched on last podcast where we are talking about obviously eating out and how we approach, those social settings and situations when we're traveling and on holiday and whatnot.
yeah, we would just go out for breakfast. So I just have like, I'm like you. I'm on the sourdough and eggs tour, but I'm doing the poached eggs version.
Oh, I had a few eggs and sourdough when we were away.
Dude, nothing came close to that place we went to in Maroochydore.
Plus,
Oh, bro, not it, bro. The places up there, they're like there's decent food up there, but it's nowhere near as good as Melbourne. There's like, bro, they're in no rush to bring the food to the table.
oh, they take forever. But Glass,
Dude.
you admit Glass was shout out to Glass Whole Foods. Like they was good. Like that was on par with Melbourne, the one in Maroochydore
Oh
here.
yeah, that place is sick. That's I'm not even talking about that place. That place is on another level. That was really good. So then that kind of like set the standard for, and then once we got there, dude, like I don't know if it's a Queensland thing, but you guys, I don't know, everyone, all the restaurants up there, they have a big time gap between an entree and a main. Is that a
Mm.
thing?
Oh, I think they're just a bit more relaxed up here, I think. Like in
Yeah.
Melbourne, everyone's like on their toes, you know what I mean? Like they're worried if they're 2 seconds late, they're gonna lose their job. I
It's
think
on the
everyone
chopping block, dude.
everyone's up here is bro. It's just very chilled, very relaxed. So they just don't I just don't think they care as much. You know what I mean? Like it's very chilled.
Yeah,
Just
all the nice restaurants that we went to, like they were pretty expensive restaurants, pretty nice restaurants. Yeah, it was like they were bringing the entree out like pretty quickly, and then we look honestly, it was like an hour.
That's a pretty substantial gap. Like
Yeah, both
usually it's
times, both times we went, and we just thought maybe it's a Queensland thing. Anyway, the second time I was waiting that hour, that was when I got sick, dude. I was just sitting at the table like
oh, bro, it hit you before you were even home.
shivering, yeah. And then that's why I couldn't wait to get out of there. So we just wait. This is like on Thursday night, so like 2 days before we were meant to leave. And yeah, so I was just waiting for the food, and I was dying. I was like so close. I was like, "Do you want to just leave?" I was like, "No, we'll wait," because it was kind of like outside. It was like outside, but with cover.
Yeah.
So I was freezing my nuts off, dude. Like I was shivering, violently shivering, bro. And ended up waiting, got the food, like ran home, and just fucking like rugged up like a motherfucker, like layers on layers
How
on
was that
layers.
flight home?
It was actually not too bad because so that was that was like Thursday night. So Thursday during the day, I started feeling a little bit better. Sorry, I started feeling like I was getting sick. Like I just thought I just felt a bit tired and kind of run down and shit. And then as the day progressed into the night, like when we were at that restaurant, it just hit me like a ton of bricks. And then so I went home, like went to bed, slept, woke up the next day, felt fucked, stayed in bed all day with like a crazy fever. And then on the Friday, I was like, I don't think I can go tomorrow on the plane. Like I'm fucked.
Yeah, yeah,
So end up sleeping through that night, woke up on Saturday, and luckily, like I had the fever was pretty much gone. So I was just like feeling a bit like sick or whatever, which was fine. So just smashed a couple of Panadols, went to the airport, and it was actually fine. Luckily, it was like perfect timing.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, so that was a bit fucked. And then yeah, got home. I was on the back end of it, so a few more days and shit. And now back into training. Thank fuck, bro. July in July, I've only trained. I trained once with you. I've trained twice now. I probably trained 7 times in the whole month.
It's crazy, eh?
Oh, so shit. I'm like yesterday was the second session back, and I'm feeling a lot better, dude. I want to get back into it. It's just been such an inconsistent month.
Yeah, too stressed, bro.
Yeah, so I'm gonna join you like I sent you a message with this 12 weeks gaining phase.
Oh yeah, bro. You're gonna be real looking real large by the end of
Put
it.
on a bit of size, which would be good. You're at what 103?
Yeah, 10 fasted weight was 103, pretty much average for this week. Like because my scales are downstairs, I probably weighed myself maybe 3 or 4 times,
Yep.
but every time it's sort of been between 102.7 and 103, which
Okay.
is which is decent. I mean, we finished up that diet in the low 102s, but you're allowed to compensate for a bit of extra, glycogen, fluid,
Yeah.
things like that come back on from a bit of increased food, but still decent condition, not too fat. So yeah,
Yeah.
things are looking pretty solid.
And you trained with the boys yesterday?
Yeah, big Cass, bikey spec.
How was it? What'd you do?
It was sick. Yeah, we trained some shoulders and arms, so it was good. He's come up with his new misses for a 30th yesterday. So yeah, it was good. It was good to catch up with the boys. So hit some shoulders and
Bro,
arms, and
Quinn was looking big in that photo.
yeah, he loves getting those angles.
Dude,
But no, like he is big. Like he's because he's competing as well. He's
yeah, he
um
told me at the wedding.
competing season A for first show of the ICN Sunshine Coast Classic.
So when is it?
I'm pretty sure well, they haven't released the dates yet, but if it's the same as what it was last year, it'll be May the 4th.
Oh, May the 4th be with you.
Oh yeah, bro. He's a big Star Wars fan too.
Is
So
he? So
he's
May the 4th. And when's your show?
uh sometime late April. I think it'd just be
Yeah,
before
so
then.
it'll be close together. Is he
Yeah.
serious about doing it?
Yeah. He
Yeah.
would have literally, I think he would have made it. Like he was in really good shape because we were originally prepping for the same show last year, but then obviously Love Island came around and that ended up just being a Love Island prep as opposed to yeah, which I have to give you that transformation for actually,
Yeah,
by the
yeah,
way.
we'll
So
put it up.
I'll ask him what photo he's comfortable with. He's too famous for us now, bro.
And his partner is going to be. I spoke to her as well at the wedding.
Yeah. So yeah, Harriet wants to
Right.
do be 2025.
2025. Okay. It was so funny, bro. Our whole table was just all bodybuilders.
Yeah. I selected that table. I put these all together. I
We got
handpicked everyone at the table.
I had Troy next to me eating out of Tupperware because he's on prep
But
against.
he's 7 weeks out. So I guess yeah, we've got Big Troy competing in 7 weeks' time at the IFBB. It's on the Gold Coast actually.
He's looking so good, dude. Fuck.
7 weeks out, he's looking real good. And then young Cassidy is competing for the first time as well at the ICN Sunshine Coast on the following weekend. So that'll be a I've never been to an ICN Sunshine Coast Classic before, so it'll be good to how many Victorian shows did we go to? I've only been to one Queensland show, but
You
the
figured
ICN.
they run pretty well, eh?
Oh, very, very good. Oh, actually, I went to heat. Like, I obviously competed up at the Tropics
Yeah.
many years ago, but I've been to heaps of shows up there with clients that have been competing as well. So, but yeah, it'll be good to check this one out here on the coast too. And I think Clint will probably come along too because he'll want to come and check out what's going on, what the competition's like.
Mm. Yeah, sick. That'll be mad. Bro, I'm doing some renos at the gym over the next couple of months.
It's getting done.
We're doing a lot of painting. So we just pulled up all the floors in the offices. Remember how there was like turf in there?
Yeah, so you're not changing the colors of the outside, the actual walls,
You're saying in the gym or at the front?
like in the gym? Yeah, like are you painting the walls, or is it more just
I
the
will
office?
eventually. So right now we're going to be we pulled up the floors in the offices. We're going to be like painting the concrete in there. We're painting all the walls in the offices, black and white. Then we're gonna paint the bathroom. We are eventually gonna paint the whole inside.
What are you going to redo the color scheme
We're just gonna do a black, I think,
with
all
no?
black. I'm contemplating whether I paint the roof, which is just gonna be a fucking massive job, but um, I'll see what happens there. And then we're getting rid of the tiles at the front, like the matting in the entrance bit, and we're gonna turf it.
Mhm.
And
So,
then
listeners, if you are in the Hawthorn area, you know,
yeah, get in. And
get in. Yeah,
then we'll I'm trying to get rid of that vertical leg press at the moment, make some space. I want to get
I
some
think it's massive. I
dude,
think
it's so
I think
big.
I've used it once. I'm just not a big vertical leg press fan myself either.
Nah, it's a bit of a shit machine. It's
But it
bro,
came in that
it's
package, didn't it? It came in that package with the
yeah.
pendulum and
They're
yeah.
so expensive as well. Like Watson have got them listed for I think it's like 5 or 6 thousand pounds.
Oh, bro, if you sell that, you can get us fucking much better equipment or much newer
Yeah.
pieces for something really
Yeah.
nice.
So I'm thinking we're pretty like if we get rid of that and we get rid of maybe one other thing, we'll have some room. If anyone's been to the gym, it's
Mm,
completely packed with equipment.
yeah.
Probably a little bit too packed, but I wouldn't mind getting a plate loaded chest press, like a hammer strength chest press and lat pull and pull
No,
down.
I've been trying to get one of those for years.
Yeah, I think it's gonna happen, bro.
You got a big chest, bro, so you didn't care enough.
Yeah, well, yeah, if we can get rid of that and we can make some room and shit, then we can definitely get it in. And then yeah, I think that will be it. We're just gonna re-tile the floor, just make the place look a bit more presentable. Should be good. So that will be happening over the next few months, and it's already underway. So we should have all the painting done by the next 2 weeks or so. Just waiting on quotes and stuff to come in, and then
The expansion.
yeah, it's gonna be sick. I can't wait. It needs a bit of a facelift, so should be looking really good once we're done.
So how long? Well, we've nearly been there for 5 years already.
Yeah, bro. Been at that building for pretty much bang on 5 years at the end of this year.
Mm.
So December. So we're gonna stay there, we've decided. So well, I was looking at options like potentially to find another building or whatever, but I think it's a pretty good spot. It's good parking.
But good site. Yeah, honestly, parking is one of those things at a
Yeah.
gym, just make or break it. Like it's if there's no parking, fuck, it's so hard.
Yeah, it's in a busy area, but it's down a side street, so it really has that kind of best of both worlds when it comes to parking. And there is plenty of parking down there for, I mean, at least plenty for our clients anyway. So that's good. And yeah, we're hiring. So currently looking for some trainers. If anyone's watching this and they think they have what it takes to work down at the lab, then they get in touch. But we found, I think we found someone really good, one person, and we're just looking for one more now.
Please be good.
Yeah, so it'd be sick. Um, what's our topic for today, Chrissy? We're talking about why you plateau and what to do about it.
Yep. Perfect.
I
Awesome.
think this
So
is a good. I think this is a good topic because I think a lot of the. I think a lot of the art of coaching has a lot to do with like anyone can download a plan from the internet, a diet, a training plan, and all this sort of stuff. But where the magic happens is within the coaching, the adjustments, the analytical side of progress on a week to week basis, um, and having like a really experienced coach there that can analyze your progress, make those adjustments, is what really allows you to avoid plateaus and create consistent fat loss week to week. And I think that's something that we're very, very good at and something that we've pretty much built our whole business on, um, allowing our clients to get faster results because we are able to, through our experience, through science, understand where the body is at that point each week, and then making those adjustments, whether they be ahead of time or whenever we see plateaus occurring, to allow our clients to make continual progress. So I think a lot of people get stuck with that stuff, man. They whatever, they get their plan, or they create a plan for themselves, and it yields some results initially, and then they kind of get stuck when things start to slow down a little bit.
yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. Like I think whenever someone's putting together, like you said, a plan for themselves, or they're really trying to work towards a goal, I feel like the number one key factor when people sign up for coaching or whatever service they originally sign up for, you're not just paying for, here's my plan. And I've had this before where people, might inquire or whatever, and they expect it's just like this singular meal plan, or
Mm.
like it's a singular training program. And it's like, that's not what is going to get you these long-term sustainable results, right? Like these changes and adjustments that, your coach is making, etc., those things are needed to continue progressing, because at the end of the day, that one-off meal plan, yeah, that might be able to yield some results for, maybe 4 weeks or 6 weeks, but eventually you're going to need some adjustments, to overcome those plateaus, I guess you could say. If you want to call them a plateau, no, they're not really, are they plateaus, or are they just, we need them to make an adjustment here in order to see, a change actually occur?
Yeah, well, it depends on. I think to a client that's stuck.
Yeah. But how many times have you heard it? Like, oh, I've plateaued. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Also knowing what to look for, because I've had clients where they're like, oh man, like I'm plateauing, like, well, do we need to make changes? Like, what's going on? But then you look back through the actual data, and this is why data collection is such an important part of the coaching process. You look at their body weight and they've consistently lost like 800 grams, a kilo. But maybe initially they saw that weight come down like 1.5 kilos, right? They saw a really fast, aggressive rate of loss at the beginning because you're always going to see a big shift in fluid, water, glycogen when you start a diet.
yep.
But then obviously once you get into the swing of that diet, you have to expect that there's not necessarily diminishing returns. It's just, you're going to be noticing like smaller chunks of weight come off. And to the untrained eye, that is going to look like, oh, I'm not losing the same, therefore I'm plateauing, right? So I think identifying first and foremost if there actually is a plateau and a change is actually required. And like you said, that's why a experienced eye is going to be needed to determine if you're actually experiencing a plateau and a change is necessary.
Yeah, and because a lot of time, yeah, in that situation that you just mentioned, then people just make unnecessary changes to their plan, which actually makes them worse off.
And like huge changes, not just like, oh, I'm going to take out 100 or 150, 200 calories. It's like, oh, I'm cutting out all carbs. I'm going,
Mhm.
I'm going to like drop my calories down by 1,000. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like I'm going to make the smallest change I can to elicit the positive result that I want. It's how much can I take off to the point where I feel like I can get to my goal as quickly as I can.
Yes, yes. Panic mode.
Panic, yeah. They're not making, again, these changes are usually not from like I've accumulated a week of data. Let me have a look at the data, see what needs to be made. It's like I'm midweek. I maybe binge the night before. Okay, I'm going to make a calorie adjustment based on the fly. They're not like they don't have the ability to take a step back, objectively look at all the information that's coming in, and then make a decision on like, pick a day and then make a decision about what they're doing moving forward. It's like panic stations. Let's cut these calories down and just keep hammering things as fast as we can.
Yeah, 100%. And I think before we get into the topic, the specifics of the topic, I think it's very, very important to talk about tracking progress,
Yeah.
because I think a lot of people, like you said, they think they are in a plateau, but they're actually not. They're just not tracking their progress properly. So when it comes to tracking progress, we usually work off three data points and potentially a fourth, which is a little bit less. Well, I'll go through the first. So basically, we want to be taking a frequent fasted weigh-in. So if we can do that daily, even better. If you can only do it 5 times, 3, 4 times a week, as long as we're getting consistent weigh-ins across the week. So a lot of people, Chris, they only just like weigh themselves once a week when they go to the gym.
Mm. Yeah,
So
and
at
then
six
like
o'clock at night, they jump on the scales, and then they're like, "Oh fuck, my weight's up from last week. I'm in a plateau."
And yeah, obviously they've got their shoes on, they've got a gut full of food, they've been drinking water all day. So like that's why we take the fasted weigh in as a data point because, and again too, the reason that we want to take the average and not just like, look at one of your weigh-ins being high or one of them being low, because clients will get excited, right? And it's great. They see this new low weigh-in come on the scale and that might be one of the outlier weigh-ins, right? Like we can have a low outlier weigh-in just like we can have a high outlier weigh-in. So I think when we're taking that fasted weigh in, when we're always looking at it, we're looking at the perspective of like taking the average over 7, or average over 5, or average over 4, or how many weigh ins that we've got, because that will give us a more tangible like result in terms of what's happening. Because you see day to day fluctuations in scale weight, like you see changes in electrolyte balance, sodium, potassium. You might have eaten a little bit later in a day. You got a couple of meals together, so you got a bit more food volume in your stomach. So it's very important that you're using the average weight and you're not just taking the just one of your weigh-ins, or even just weighing yourself once a week, or let alone weighing yourself at the gym, which
Mm.
is completely irrelevant. Like, how many times you hear the bodybuilder that's like, oh yeah, I'm like 260 pounds or whatever, 130 kilos or 120 kilos, whatever they say the number is. But this end of day, they've got 5 meals in, and that weigh-in is completely irrelevant. It doesn't mean anything now.
Exactly. So we need to understand basically that your weight fluctuates on a daily basis, irrespective of fat loss or fat gain. So it can fluctuate for many other reasons, and it will fluctuate for many other reasons. Um, so for that reason, we need to take a more frequent weigh-in, like Chris said, rather than just once a week. And then we need to take an average or graph, like we do on our training app. So basically we can look at trends in the weight, because yeah, you're going to have fluctuations, and that's not due to you gaining or losing fat, and it's just due to other external factors that are happening within the body: water, salt, other things, stress, whatever it is. So taking a frequent weigh-in, using an average, that's going to eliminate any like big fluctuations or anything like that, and give you a much more accurate idea of where your weight is. And then when you can compare that to the previous week and the previous week before that, you're going to start to get a much better picture of whether or not you're actually losing fat. The other thing is we want to take that weigh in the morning when we're fasted. So just getting up in the morning, taking a piss, jumping on the scales in your underwear. This is going to be the most consistent time to weigh yourself and and yield the most consistency in your actual weights, because every morning you're going to be relatively in the same state. Haven't drank any water, you haven't eaten any food, you've just emptied your bladder. That's as consistent as we can possibly get it. Once you start going through the day, eating, drinking, doing all this sort of stuff, your weight becomes much less accurate to what it truly is. Okay. So getting that morning weigh in is super important. The other two factors that we want to measure for progress is um, number one, your photos. So photos are obviously going to be very important. Um, getting a photo weekly is something that we do with our clients, and it's a very, very good way to see how much progress your clients made over a week. Because, yeah, look, even if we're doing all the things correctly when it comes to doing the daily weightings, fasted, taking the averages, all this sort of stuff, you still may not see the scale go down that week. But if you're seeing changes in the photos, or the third data point we want to take is a waist measurement. If we're seeing progress with the waist, and we're seeing progress with the photos, and your client's saying, "Hey, I'm down a belt size this week," or my t-shirts are feeling better. They're not like my stomach area is not pushing up against my t-shirt or whatever. These are all very, very good signs that um we're making progress despite the weight. And I know, I can speak for myself. I know with a lot of my clients, this happens quite frequently.
Yeah, definitely. Like, yeah, like, and I think when it comes to making changes and adjustments, if again, the fasted daily weigh-in is probably going to be, I would say, in my opinion, the number one data point that you want to be looking at. But in terms of being like a primary, but and obviously photos as well. But things like your waist measurement, like it's common, especially I find this for females, like where maybe they're in like that late luteal phase of the menstrual cycle, where they're just about to have their cycle and they notice that the scale weight goes up. But that also might be a case you take a waist measurement and realize, oh, my waist measurement's actually down. This is hormonally induced.
Hmm.
So, like, obviously that does happen in guys, but I think guys can tend to be sometimes a little bit more linear in the way that they lose weight, whereas females you might notice a bit more fluctuation. So, I think for myself, it's more common to see me take these secondary data points into consideration when I'm working with females, because there is quite a big difference when you're working with males and females in terms of the way that they respond to fat loss, and how quickly you're able to sort of lose fat and how big and aggressive the deficit can go. But I definitely think having multiple data points is such a key factor, because like especially this, I think this happens a lot as well, even in males too, when you get to the tail end of a diet, when someone is going from like being lean to sort of very lean, or even if let's just say they've lost like 20 kilos, but they're coming to abs for the first time, they've still lost a significant amount of weight. So it's common to see that these like changes in scale weight are less and less frequent. You know what I mean? Like the drops get smaller and smaller. So it's more common that you need to rely on these secondary data points, i.e. photos, and like a waist measurement and things of that nature. And even just asking the questions, like you said, like, how are your clothes fitting? Like, is your belt tighter? Like, because, when you go into a gym, like, even if you're wearing like a weightlifting belt or something, you can notice yourself going up in those as well. In terms of going down in sizes, or even just your belt you put on for your work pants, like those changes are important. That's an information and data that needs to be taken into account, because sometimes that could cause you to make a premature change that you don't need to make. You look at just the scale weight, you don't look at anything else, and all of a sudden you're thinking, oh no, this person's not making any progress. I need to drop the calories and we need to get more aggressive. But they may still be making progress. It just hasn't actualized on the scale yet.
That's correct. Yeah, and I can't tell you the amount. I mean, yeah, like you said, females are, this is quite common with females. I can't tell you how many transformation photos I've been sent from our team, um, of women that, mate, it fucking looks like they've lost 10 kilos. And then when I asked the coach, like, how much has she lost? She's like, yeah, like 2 kilos.
Yeah.
Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Completely different person, dude. Like, and I think because a lot of the time, not, I mean, I don't know, I hope this doesn't sound sexist, but a lot of the time when women come in and start with us, they're largely like untrained at that
Yeah,
point.
yeah, definitely.
So I mean, yes, there's of course there's hormonal stuff, and the weight does tend to kind of stick a lot more. But I think because they are a lot of the time seem to be a little bit more untrained as well, then you throw training in the mix, and it's kind of like a bit of a body composition change at the same
Yeah,
time. So
I definitely agree. They do have that ability to sort of recomp, well, not even recomp, because they don't have the muscle in the first place, but
yeah,
really add a significant amount of muscle, even whilst eating in a pretty significant deficit. Because yeah, like you said, a lot of women, I don't know if it's a sexist thing. I just think, sometimes guys will maybe just go out and just do shit without thinking about having the correct plan or whatever it is. And this is another reason I actually love working with females as well, because they are very receptive to everything. And one thing they do very well, and I can tell you from, over 10 plus years of coaching females, is they do not let their ego get in the way, which is such a good thing, because when they go in and train, they're not trying to fucking just lift the most amount of weight. They don't care about that. They're more focused on getting the technique right, getting the form right, and they're much more receptive to making technique changes and adjustments, rather than like a guy will come in and he might be like, oh, like I'm so hell bent on benching like 100 kilos. Meanwhile, he's dive bombing the bar onto his chest. He's only doing half reps. Females don't care about that largely. Like they just care about doing the movement right. And usually they use the full range of motion, and they take the progression slower, and they just generally make, I think, pretty fast progress. Like, just because, like I said, they're relatively untrained, but they're such a sponge when it comes to that, like the information that they take in.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And look, dude, this is what I think the problem is, because this is, I think, largely, especially in the female population, this leads to a lot of frustration, because they could be doing everything right. Like if they're doing it on their own, they could be doing a lot of things right, but mate, in a month their weight barely moves, and they're like, "Fuck, I'm not getting any result. I'm putting in all this effort, I'm not getting any results." So this is like when we would show them, look, this is your photos from a month ago, this is your photos from now, this is your waist measurement from a month ago, this is your waist measurement now. So we have these backup data points that will instill confidence in the client and show them that, look, don't worry about your weight right now. Like your body is changing. Your body
That's
has
where
changed.
weight, and that's a great example of why weight for that specific population may not be the best data point to always rely on, because I've seen it a ton as well. Like they can look like their physique has changed so much, but the scale weight hasn't really changed much at all. And like I said, I think that largely comes down to being relatively untrained, or having a significant time maybe detrained, or maybe they've just come back from having a baby or something like that. So I've definitely seen that, year after year, that, yeah, that's something I see all the time as well.
The other thing, like with more of the trained population, um, the weight factor is going to become a much more important. Okay, so like what weight is important, guys. Like a lot of people, I think, that are not as clued in to kind of like tracking progress, think that weight doesn't matter a lot, as long as like you're
The ones
changing.
on Instagram where you see him smashing the scales with a hammer or
Yeah,
something.
but if your photos are changing and your waist is changing, your weight will eventually come down. Okay. It might be sometimes in some instances delayed, but it, it's going, like you're going to get showed the progress on the scales eventually. And I think some people can, can not see there's a camp of people that I've worked with that they see the scales not moving and they still think they're making progress. They think that it's not important that the scales don't come down. Um, so I feel like some people sometimes trick themselves into thinking that they're making progress when they're not making progress.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And if you're not seeing anything move, guys, then pretty much you're not making progress.
That's what I mean. You have to be tracking the other variables too.
Yep.
Often that camp of people, they're not taking regular check-in photos. They're not
Mm,
taking a waist measurement. They don't even track their training largely. It's
mm.
just they might track weight every now and again, or they might track weight when it's at a favorable point to trick themselves into thinking that they've obviously lost weight, when in reality, nothing's actually changed. So I think it's an important distinguishing factor that you have to take all of your metrics into account when you're thinking about making an adjustment.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay. So we know that we need to track progress properly in order to then know if we actually are in a plateau. Otherwise, we don't know. Okay. This is where a lot of people fuck up. They don't realize whether they think they're in a plateau, but maybe they're not because they're not tracking properly. So we know what to track now. We know we want to track the weight. We know we want to track the waist. We know we want to track photos. We know we want to get an idea from the client of how they are feeling when they look in the mirror, when they put on their clothes, which is less data driven, but it's a question that I ask every client every week. How do you feel about your progress this week? And often I will get, answers like, yep, down a belt size, t-shirt's bigger, notice my chest fat is reducing, whatever it is. So these are the four metrics that we want to be tracking. When would you say that a client is actually in a plateau?
Yeah, so I think, when we're looking at what a plateau would generally mean, it would mean, I would say we've probably gone 2 weeks without seeing a marginal change in scale weight and photos, and yeah, probably scale weight, photos, and maybe their waist measurement stayed the same. Um, I mean, we've gone through phases where, we've probably tested skin folds and things like that too. But again, the relative error with the things like that. And actually, just a point I wanted to touch on, because this is something that I do see a lot of, and people send me a lot of following like initial consults and things, which is not a good marker of your progress, is the in-body scan.
Oh, actually, that's a very good topic that we
People
love
will
to
send me
discuss.
that and think, oh, like this is, my weight's down, like nothing's changed, like what's going on? Or maybe they get on the in-body scan and they're really hydrated and they've put on all this muscle and they think they've lost all this fat mass. They are not accurate, right? Like they have an inaccuracy range of over upward and to and over 20%, right?
Really?
So it is
That a fact?
that drastic, right? Like it is a massive range. Like I don't even want to see your in-body data. I don't want to hear about it. It just is not relevant to what's going on with your physique and the change that need to be made. So I just want to get that out of the way, because sometimes people will send me that and they'll be like, oh yeah, like things look like they're moving well, but I'll still make a change. And they're like, oh, like why are we making an adjustment? Like my in-body scan showed this, this, and this. I'm like, well, your weight hasn't actually moved over the last 2 weeks. Your photos, you look relatively the same, and your waist measurement has stayed the same, right? So I think just using those tangible data points, they might seem simple, but it's the act and consistency of doing them over time. So that brings me back to like, obviously, like with the causes of the plateau, right? Like I said, obviously before, 2 weeks is probably what I see. And I think, if we're not seeing that general reduction in body weight over time, like if you've gone 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month, and the scale weight hasn't shifted, and you've been on point with your nutrition, you haven't missed your macros, your calories have been the same, and there's no like elements of error in your calculations, because at the end of the day, when you're say 60 kilos, your maintenance calories will be at a certain level, right? When you're 55 kilos, your maintenance calories will decrease. They'll be at lower than where they were, because you're now a smaller human being, right? It takes less energy for you to move around. And we use the term, adaptive thermogenesis. And basically, as you go through a fat loss phase, your body becomes very efficient at the way that you utilize energy. So it's not uncommon. You have to make changes and adjustments. Like you're not going to get to just setting yourself into a deficit and just staying there and continuing to lose weight, right? So, like I think when you're starting a diet, those changes, yeah, you might make a big one initially, and that'll set your scale, that'll set the tone for maybe 4 weeks or so, right? But then as you lose more and more weight, those changes need to become more and more frequent. Because we're sort of trying to fight, the adaptive thermogenesis, and obviously we'll probably touch on like the role of NEAT as well, your non-exercise activity.
Hold on, I think you're getting a bit ahead of yourself. So let's just talk about what is a plateau first, and then we'll tackle what to do.
Your
And
definition of a plateau, would it be similar to mine in being like sort of maybe 2 weeks has gone by, we haven't seen a remarkable change in any of our metrics?
100%.
Would that be probably a plateau for yourself? Is that what you would
Yeah,
suggest?
100%. So if I'm not seeing any movement in those in those three things or four things that I mentioned, for 2 weeks, then I will likely change something in the plan, given that they've been compliant.
Yeah. Again, compliance is
Won't even cover that in this thing, but that is a main.
let's just pretend that compliance for the rest of this podcast, they are nailing everything. That there's no weekend binges, they're on the track from Monday to Friday, and then the weekends they just don't track anything, right? Let's pretend this individual is tracking everything 7 out of 7 days.
Yep. And the other thing I want to talk about is the in-body scanner, because I think that's a really good topic. We have a few clients that do them semi-regularly, and man, yeah, they're so bad. I just think
It looks like some people have put on like 4 or 6 kilos of muscle mass whilst they've been in a deficit. You know what I mean? Like it just is not happening.
Yeah.
Like,
So just talk about like what the variables are there, Chris. Like what's causing, why is it inaccurate?
So the main thing that you're looking at there is likely going to be cellular hydration. So when you step on the in-body scan, let's just say you're really dehydrated, it will give the illusion that you have less muscle mass, right? As soon as you're more hydrated, and obviously, you've pushed more fluid intracellular, you might have some more carbohydrates in your system. It sort of confuses that, and then obviously it looks at the total like lean mass essentially of what you've got. And because you're not like the gold standard obviously is going to be a DEXA scan. even those do have some, inaccuracies. But the in-body scan, unfortunately, you can't just step on a scale, put your hands on a thing, and it's going to spit out, random numbers, appropriate numbers. But yeah, the main thing there is just the fact that it confuses sort of lean body mass just with like, hydration status. So you could even try this for yourself. Like if you were to step on it completely dehydrated, you get off, drink like a liter or two of water, step back on, it'll look like you put on 2 kilos of muscle mass.
Yeah. Also, like, I think when people go from taking time off or being untrained and then they start training, it affects how much water could be taken in by the muscle cell.
Yeah.
So it affects how much muscle, like how much lean mass you have. So I've often, even I've seen this with calipers as well. Like when someone first starts a plan and then they get 2 weeks in and then you do their next calipers, a lot of the time there is a huge bump in lean mass.
Yeah.
And it's just because now they are training, so their muscles are taking in more water and holding
carbohydrates as well.
cellular fluid.
Like a trained muscle can readily take up glycogen as well. So that's obviously why when, you might notice this after you have like maybe 2 weeks off the gym, you go back into the gym, you start, getting your diet back on track, you start eating some carbs again, and you look so much bigger and fuller. It's such a transient look. Like obviously when we're prepping for a show and we're coming into like, peaking and whatnot, there's a reason that bodybuilders will carb load, right? Is because it creates a transient change in the actual look of the muscle. Like it's full, it's hydrated, you're able to fill in more carbohydrates inside the muscle. And that unfortunately
affects
gives
your in-body scan.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
So it's not tissue.
No. Unfortunately, we wish it was. If it was that easy, people would be just putting on kilos and kilos of muscle every week. But it just doesn't happen. Like it's a pipe dream. You know what I mean? Like it's just doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
It's a relatively slow process.
All right. So we know we've kind of defined what a plateau is. Let's talk about what sort of changes can we make? What can we do if once we are tracking everything, we've seen a plateau, 2 weeks, nothing's changed. What do we do, Chris? What do we do?
Yeah, so I think firstly there we need to look at obviously your caloric intake. Obviously I think something that we've used for quite a few years is sort of the, calories per kilogram of body weight model. That's something that you use as a bit of a starting point. And, ultimately as you go down, you'll realize that your calories per kilogram of body weight at like a certain weight, that will go up the more like your weight comes down. So, for you to sort of match your intake, you'll need to obviously make some calorie reductions. Now, when it comes to making reductions, if someone is sort of more in the earlier phases of their diet, and maybe we've hit a little bit of a plateau, like, I'm probably looking at pulling out somewhere in the ballpark of probably 200 to 400 calories. I think would be a more than sufficient change. If I'm looking at in terms of macros, somewhere, 25 grams of carbs, 10 grams of fat, keep sort of protein relatively the same. That's a common adjustment, for me to make for someone, because like I said, you are going to have to make some adjustments to your calories as you do go through. Obviously those are just some arbitrary numbers, but I've obviously seen that over the years, that those are some of the adjustments that I've make pretty consistently. But somewhere in the ballpark of probably 200 to 400 calories, depending on if it's like a complete stall and maybe they've lost zero, or if the rate of loss has just trailed off. So sometimes it might be like, okay, they've lost 800 grams. Fantastic, I've made no change. The next week it might be maybe it was 400 grams. So I might not need to make such a big drastic change to drive that rate of loss up higher to sort of 600, 800 grams. So it might only be 150 calories to 200 calories if that, obviously the difference, in terms of their scale weight is only relatively small. If they've lost, like, let's just say it's been 2 weeks and they've lost like no weight, right? Like zero. I will probably make a bigger calorie adjustment. I think especially in those initial parts of the diet where it could be like closer to maybe that 400. But that could be a combination of like, increasing steps, decreasing food, and also the addition of cardio, right? Again, cardio, we'll probably get into that a little bit later on, but it is a tool that we do use to leverage a little bit of extra energy expenditure at times when maybe we don't want to make bigger calorie drops.
Yeah, 100%. I think, yeah, looking at the client's calorie intake, then looking at what the rate of loss has been, like you said, if it's like if it's slowing, like if we have a goal to lose X amount a week and we only lose 50% of that in 2 weeks in a row, and we want to keep that rate of loss at where we want, it's not necessarily a plateau, but it's just it's a slowing rate of loss, then that adjustment will be small. And I think, look, the amount that you adjust by really depends on the amount of calories that they're actually on as well. Um, it, if it's the first adjustment and the calories are already quite high, then yeah, like 200 to 400 could be a good.
Yeah. But
Um,
you're not going to be doing that like, when you're very, very close to abs or even at abs towards the end of a diet. Like that would have you eating like 1,000 calories or 800 calories. You know what I mean? Like you wouldn't make those adjustments. I was more so referring to like the beginning of your diet. Yeah, like I said, as you go through, those adjustments are going to be smaller and smaller.
but what would you say, like a 10 to 15% adjustment?
Yeah, yeah, I would say that'd be pretty much, yeah, maybe, yeah, probably even, I guess even towards the end, it could even be like a 5% adjustment
Yeah.
if you're really, really getting quite lean.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. And what do you think the cause for the plateau is? Like, what are
So,
the main factors that are happening? I know you touched on it before, just with body weight largely coming down.
yeah.
Um, Talk about that a little bit.
So, obviously I mentioned the term adaptive thermogenesis before. And look, basically that's just a way of saying as you lose more body fat and as you lose more total weight, the body essentially, we recognize it as like a threat response, right? So it's not like you become more metabolically there used to be the term sort of metabolic damage that was thrown around a lot. That doesn't really occur, but like I said before, the smaller the individual gets, the lower the caloric intake will need to go in order to make those changes. Now, basically, what happens with the body in terms of that term that I used before is that every step you take becomes more efficient. All the cardio you do becomes more efficient. And essentially, on like a cellular level, your body becomes more efficient at utilizing those calories that you're currently on. So eventually you'll get to a point where, we know this from the starvation studies that, you will eventually starve to death, right? So we know that there is no real point, people will common throw around like, oh, the starvation this and starvation that. We know that doesn't exist. It's just on more of a spectrum for people. But you also have different types of people that respond differently to diets as well in terms of how much their metabolic rate will slow down. You'll have some guys, and you would have seen this in your clients, where you maybe make one change and you don't need to make an adjustment for 10 weeks. They lose consistently each and every time. Some clients, which will have a bit more of what I would like to call like a thrifty metabolism, they're the individuals who you might need to make more consistent and frequent changes for. Because their metabolism it adapts very quickly to the changes that you've made to it. So that's why it's important to track like a majority of your other metrics, like your steps and your output and expenditure, things like that, because you might find unconsciously you start moving less. You also start to notice even outside of like your actual steps, you start leaning on things, you don't stand up as much. So your body is unconsciously trying to conserve calories to survive, right? So that term, adaptive thermogenesis, basically just means your body's going to try and conserve energy to survive. So it's as you go through the dieting process, it's inevitably going to happen that your metabolism is going to slow down. Based on obviously those factors, because your body's going to want to move less, essentially, just as simply as I can say it.
Yeah. So we got the loss of mass in general. So, hopefully mainly fat mass.
Yeah.
But like if you're a 100 kilo dude walking around day to day doing, going to work, jumping on public transport, maybe you play a sport, you go to the gym, 100 kilo dude then loses 20 kilos. So now they're an 80 kilo dude. The 80 kilo version of that person is just going to burn less calories
Yeah.
in their day to day life. Okay. So you're carrying around an extra 20 kilos. That needs, that's going to create, more demand for calories during the day. Um, as people lose weight, their calorie needs reduce. Okay. So this is why, if you 100 kilo dude, you start a diet on 3,000 calories, you lose 20 kilos. That 3,000 calories may not yield fat loss beyond that point anymore, because you are a smaller unit now that requires less calories because you've lost 20 kilos. Now, the addition of lean mass may help in some aspects to kind of get you burning more calories, because more muscle requires more calories to use those muscles. So that's basically one aspect of why things begin to slow down and potentially eventually plateau. The other thing is that you mentioned was NEAT, so non-exercise activity thermogenesis. So this is basically any non-exercise activity that you do throughout the day. So if you're moving your hands around, you're getting up, you're standing rather than sitting, whatever it is, anything that's not deemed as traditional exercise that burns calories throughout the day, twitching, moving, kicking your legs, whatever it is. As we get into a calorie deficit further and further and further, the body has ways of reducing this subconsciously. And if you've ever been very, very lean, you'll probably realize that this is a significant change in like, you'll notice a significant change. You like Chris said,
You'll feel yourself. You don't want to move.
yeah,
Like you just want to sit on the couch and like that's it. Like there's no getting up fucking cleaning the gardens when the wife or the missus wants you to. You're not lean. You're not like standing most of the day. You're going to be leaning on things. You're going to be sitting down because you're so tired.
everything just moves slower. If you've ever been down to very low levels of body fat, you'll know this. Everything you do is just like the lazy version of what you would usually do. You just move much, much slower. You blink slower. You don't fidget. You don't get up, as frequently as you would usually. You'll say, like, if you're on the couch and you want to go and get a drink of water, you'll just be like, I'll fucking do it later. Like, you know what I mean?
Or it's like a decision that you would make before you wouldn't even think about it. You know what I mean? Like you're getting up, you're just doing it. But because of the energy availability, and you're just so exhausted that you're just like, I just can't be fucked.
And just to speak to people who are not trying to get super, super lean, it's a spectrum, like you said before. So as you're the longer and longer you're in that calorie deficit, and the more you're losing fat, you will start to notice that this is happening subconsciously. And a lot of people underestimate how many calories this stuff burns, don't they?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
It can make a big difference, a big, big difference to the amount of calories that you burn on a daily basis by just reducing your non-exercise activity thermogenesis.
Obviously, the best way we have to track it is steps, but even then, that's not even accounting for, like we said, the fact that, okay, now I'm laying on the couch rather than sitting on the couch.
Mhm.
Or maybe I've got my sit to stand desk, but now I'm sitting most of the day and I'm not standing. But that doesn't count to my steps. But those things still factor into, the amount of calories that you would have otherwise been burning through your metabolic rate. Yeah, so I think, yeah, even though we have steps to track it as a way, just, being mindful of the posture and the way you sit and all those other things can go a long way to sort of improving your fat loss outcomes as well.
Yep. So they're the two biggest factors, would you say, that affect
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
metabolic adaptation?
Yeah.
I want to just touch a little bit further on, like, I think there is a big camp of people who think that they have hit starvation mode. And although these two things will affect your metabolic rate and how many calories you can consume on a daily basis, it's not going to completely overcome fat loss or even get you to gain weight, is it?
No, not at all. So yeah, I think obviously we mentioned the starvation study before. Like there is an amount of food or an intake that would eventually cause you to get to such low levels of body fat that you would die and your organs would shut down. But again, your brain and like all the signaling pathways in your brain, sort of from the hypothalamus, their job is to keep you alive, right? So it will do everything possible to try and conserve as much energy as possible. And this is obviously linked to like your behaviors, your drive to eat, like all of these different things. So it's eventually, like, it doesn't really exist, but that point could be slightly different for everyone. And I mentioned the differences in people's metabolism, the way they respond to fat loss, Yes, admittedly, there are some genetic variations, maybe upward of 10-15% in people's metabolic rate, but largely it's going to come down to obviously lifestyle factors and being able to override those innate like abilities that human's got. So if you can override those things, you will eventually get past whatever this starvation or there's no starvation state. Because like I said, if that was the case, famine wouldn't exist in the world. And people wouldn't be dying of starvation. So it's just that point is going to be slightly different for everyone in terms of where that number is, because likely it comes down to you just got your intake down to a point where you psychologically couldn't handle it anymore. You started unconsciously snacking more, thinking, oh, this is not that much, but that little extra handful of chocolates or that extra handful of nuts, you could be adding in an extra 80 to 100 calories. And every time you do that, your body's going to try and fight for that. And sometimes it even almost happens unconsciously. For some people, they might actually not even realize that they're doing it, just because they've been so calorically deprived. And it takes someone, a very, very strong mentally sort of person to be able to get themselves down to such elite levels of body fat, in terms of competing and whatnot, because you have to override all of those behaviors that are driving you to eat. Right. So yeah, like I said, starvation mode, like we do see, in certain populations of people, like, maybe endometriosis and things like that, where we do see some element of metabolic slowdown. It doesn't mean that you're just not still gonna be able to eat, to a point where you're going to lose body fat, and also eat to a point where you could starve yourself to death.
Yeah, 100%. So while we have slowdown, we don't have stopping.
Correct. Yeah.
And yeah, there are, I guess, groups of people that will need like do have slowdown to a point where it does cause them to push the nutrition quite low, which can create um adherence problems.
Yeah.
That's what you'll see. It's not common, but like you said, with people with hormonal issues and stuff like that, I think this is often the problem a lot of times.
Yeah. Even with like thyroid disorders, like, Hashimoto's and things of that nature, it's still not impossible to lose fat. I think far
We've
too
seen
often.
some really good transformations at Strengthlab with Hashimoto.
I've worked with quite a few people that have had, different metabolic disorders and things that we've sort of had to work around. And, again, admittedly, sometimes it happens a little bit slower, and, maybe their calories do need to go, a little bit lower. But if they're mentally prepared to do that, the fat loss happens and it does still occur.
So just like I think because that's such an extreme situation, but I think it does speak to what on an extreme level what needs to happen. Tell me, Chris, like what are you running a client through that is experiencing these things? Like, are you wording them up from the start to say, hey, this is like because you have Hashimoto's or whatever it is, your adherence needs to be 100%. Okay, this is something I'm going to tell you straight from the get-go, because if it's not, like, little things are going to make a big difference for you specifically. Like, to the average person, a little snack here and there, going over your calories by 5-10% in a day every now and then, not going to be a big issue. But for you, these things are going to matter.
Oh, totally. Like, you have to be open and honest with that conversation right from the get go, because I think we touched on a podcast recently about managing expectations.
Mm.
And the expectations for that individual, if they're going to be expecting to lose kilos and kilos a week, it's just not going to happen that way. They're going to have to be much more, I guess, accurate and on point. And this is even more so the case for women, because, a majority of women, when they're going to be losing fat, depending on weight as well, are probably going to be somewhere between, 1,500 and 2,000 calories, right? So the margin for error is already much smaller being a female, and being the fact that they're obviously based on metabolic rate is much lower because they're a smaller human. And then you also throw on like a disease like Hashimoto's, or some other sort of thyroid disorder like that. They have to be on point with every detail. Especially the case, they'll become better at sort of managing it and stuff over time. And obviously, once they transition out of the diet, they're a lot more well equipped. But when we're going through that fat loss process, I think managing that expectation right from the outset that, look, we're not going to get the results that you want if you're not 100% on point with everything. They really need to realize that this is not like the norm, but also, not making them feel too different, I guess, at the same time, because the expectation should be set that they are following the plan 100%. And if they're not, they'll see this themselves too. They'll have weeks where they know, oh, I might have overeaten a little bit. Oh, shit, the scale weight didn't move at all. And then just having that open and honest communication with me as well around them not being able to stick to it, and or them not maybe have stuck to the calories exactly that week, and then realizing, oh, if I'm not 100%, whether I tell them or not, they will eventually realize that if they're not 100%, the results are not going to come.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting. And it is quite a tough situation. I mean, it is hard. Admittedly, it is hard for the person.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things. And I think, um, just
But
to,
again, you're a person of your own circumstance, right? So if that's your situation and that's what you have to do as an individual, it's no different to, like, you look at a lot of women, right? Who might eat, they look at their partner and they're like, oh, I wish I could eat all those calories. But if you want to be a 100 kilo male, then sure, you can eat all those calories. But unfortunately, your portions are probably going to have to be half of what his are.
mm,
So again, it's just the difference. It's just you've got your own circumstances, and the plan just needs to be set based on what you as an individual, obviously what your goals are, and also what your aspirations are moving forward.
yeah. And I think that's where, like with people with more adaptive metabolisms and people that I think like, they might not have any diseases or whatever, any issues, but they just find it tougher to lose fat. For those people, it's very, very important that they just stay relatively lean, because going through the whole period of losing fat is going to be hard. And I think a lot of the time people do it in the wrong manner and then they gain weight again and they just yo-yo, and like it's just making life so hard for them. So like, the thing I always explain to people like that is like, you need to be more consistent, like in the long term.
Yeah.
We need to go through this period where you need to lose fat, and it's probably going to be a little bit difficult for you. But once we get there, things become a lot easier if we exit the diet correctly and we do all the right things. And then it's not just like we want to get lean. It's like we want to get lean and we want to stay lean for you, because you going through that process of having to lose fat again, it's going to be a hard process. So once we get you there, we do the right things, and then we can focus on building lean mass, which is going to make your situation a lot easier as well, pushing up calories. But let's not let the body fat get out of control ever again.
Yeah. Also, like you said, the fact that now that you put on all this fat again, that's time that you now have to spend back in a deficit, which you're not really going to be making look stacks of progress in terms of adding lean mass.
Mhm.
So you're just now, you have to realize which camp you're sort of in, and you'll know this. You know what I mean? Like, if you sort of try to diet and you feel like things haven't worked, and usually there's a bunch of factors that play with that. But some people, they just make a couple of changes, they stop drinking some beers, and they cut out the sweets and they lose 10 kilos. But that is also not everyone. And I think just trying your best to, I always have that conversation with them, not to get discouraged, because they tend to sort of compare their own metabolic circumstances with maybe people around them who, everyone knows that guy who's got, like, super crazy fast metabolism, he can diet on really high food, but that's not you. So you don't want to suffer from that poor me syndrome, to the point where it's sort of like, you just get so overwhelmed and disappointed with things because, maybe your progress is not as quick as someone else's.
Yeah, 100%. And that's very important. Like, often people who start working with us start, like, they may say, "Hey, this I saw this guy on the Instagram
Oh,
page.
I get that all the time. It's like, why are my results not as fast as
He
this guy?
lost
This
15
guy.
kilos in 8 weeks or something like that, and I've only lost half a kilo a week." Everyone is different, guys. You can't compare your own journey to someone else's, because they likely have a completely different metabolism to you. Are you still there?
Yeah. Hang on a second. The camera overheated.
Oh no. Ah, there we are. Yeah, so that person, everyone has a different metabolic rate, guys, due to many, many different factors. So the main thing is that you are making progress. As long as you're making consistent progress, then you're winning. Okay. And what I do specifically with clients is I find the optimal rate of loss for that person. And once I get there, then we just keep going for that specific number with that person. It may not be a kilo a week. It may not be 2 kilos a week. It may be half a kilo a week. But as long as it's consistent and it's manageable for the client, that's what matters. Because yeah, we can push for a kilo a week, but your calories are gonna be lower than the average person that's losing a kilo a week that maybe we are working with. because we're not pushing that person any harder. We're pushing them to the point where things are manageable and they're able to be consistent. And it just so happens that for someone that's a bit more genetically blessed, that might be a larger amount each week, but for you, it may not be. But as long as you are losing consistently, that's really important. So there's going to be big differences
I think that's why we always give ranges as well, right? Like when we're saying, oh, 0.5 to a kilo a week, or, whatever ranges we're giving in terms of fat loss or what we would deem acceptable of fat loss for the week, it's a broad spectrum. Like 0.5 to a kilo, that's a big difference. That could be a big difference in the amount of calories someone's on and the deficit that they're in. So it's such an important thing that your caloric intake is only relative to you, and then also the circumstances that you're in. Because, if someone's super stressed and they've got a lot on at work, like, I'm not going to be pushing that individual through 1.5 or 1 kilo or even 1.2 kilo loss per week, because I know psychologically they're not going to be able to handle it as well. So your circumstances, maybe that same individual, maybe like a few months down the line, things are super chilled. Cool. Maybe even in that circumstance, we can go a little bit harder. But even the circumstances of the same individual can sometimes be different, and the rate of loss can also be different between different diets as well.
And that person might be starting from 130 kilos.
Exactly. Yeah.
So they're going to obviously lose weight a lot faster. You might be they might be 50 kilos overweight, 40 kilos overweight. You're only like 10 kilos overweight. It's not a comparison. So, all right, cool. Let's round out the topic. I just want to talk about what are the interventions that we can do now that we understand everything. We understand how to track the progress. We know we're in a plateau. We know what's causing the plateau. Is it just calorie reduction? What other options do we have?
Yeah, so I think firstly, something I just want to rule out for a lot of people, because they seem to think if I'm going to do more weight training sessions, I'm going to be burning an exponential amount of calories, right? So your weight training is just there to facilitate the retention of tissue, retention of muscle, or even potentially add of muscle, right? And we touched on that in another podcast where it's sort of 3 to 5 sessions a week. So I don't want people thinking, and I have this question quite a lot, it's like, can we just do more weight training to, expend more energy rather than me doing cardio? And the answer to that is weight training just doesn't burn that many calories, unfortunately. It's very start-stop. It's there for a specific purpose, right? Now, brings me to the other markers, right? Like we can make some caloric reductions. That's number one. We can also increase our step target. We can add in some cardio, right? Basically, either making a food decrease or the increase of steps or increasing cardio. They're essentially two sides of the same thing, right? All we're trying to do is decrease your total daily energy expenditure, right? The amount of calories that are coming in. So it depends on the client, and this is where it's important to ask the question, because some clients just hate cardio, right? They would rather take their food bottom low without having to do any cardio, and that's okay, right? If you're in that camp, that's fine. But if you do find that your adherence is a little bit worse, your mood's a little bit worse, and again, your performance in the gym is also worse, you might be better off, increasing your step target first. Generally, I like to get my step target for my clients up a little bit higher before we add cardio. So just because it depends too, if they're an office worker versus maybe someone who's working maybe more of a construction job or maybe a little bit more physically laborious. But if again, time is of the essence, cardio is going to be your fastest way to burn a meaningful amount of calories in a short period of time. So, for the person that maybe, okay, all I can do is 4,000 steps a day, 5,000 steps a day. I'm stuck at the desk. There's nothing more I can do. My food is already at a point where I'm starting to struggle a little bit. Okay, we probably need to increase our expenditure a bit more via cardio. So this is where we'll start to add things in. Now, I think when it comes to using energy expenditure and leveraging things like cardio and steps, small changes are going to get a decent result, right? Because again, if you throw everything in the kitchen sink at it right from the get-go, you go from doing no cardio to doing 7 sessions a week, you're going to become very efficient at doing that output or that exercise, that cardio exercise. So you're going to be burning less and less calories every time you do it. So we want to be just trying to keep you sensitive. So we might even just start on as low as, say, 2 cardio sessions a week, right? And that could be somewhere between sort of 20 and 30 minutes, heart rate around 120, 140 beats per minute, right? Steps, I generally, if someone is able, I like to get that sort of up to around sort of 10 to 12K and more or less just keep it within that range. Because, anyone would know if you track your steps, going over sort of 10 to 12 takes a lot of time, right? And if you're time poor, adding in cardio could be an excellent way of leveraging some extra expenditure. So you could get that cardio in, you know, like I said, 20, 30 minutes. Doesn't really matter what modality you want to do. It could be bike, it could be cross trainer, it could be the stairs. You know, no matter what you want to do there, it will work and it will be very efficient. So those are sort of the main things that I sort of like to add in to sort of leverage, you know, a little bit more calories. And look, generally, I think, you know, you can chuck in some numbers into some calculators, this and that. But if you're just looking at it purely from like an energy balance standpoint, 1,000 steps, depending on the size individual, is probably going to be about 30 to 40 calories, right? If you think about that from a time standpoint versus cardio, you could essentially burn like 200 calories in 20, 25 minutes, right? So, you know, you might be able to burn almost double the amount of calories doing cardio as you would being out for doing steps for the same amount of time.
You took the words out of my mouth. You literally said what I was going to say. It summed it up perfectly. Yeah. So the time factor is huge because a lot of people are time poor. So this is, you know, doing adding an extra 2,000 steps to someone's day. Um, that's going to be like 20 minutes, and that's going to yield, like you said, maybe whatever 30 to 40 calories per thousand. Um, so we're going to get you can get a lot more bang for buck from doing cardio. Would you say twice as much
Yeah,
calorie?
so I guess, look, again, size of the human, 1,000 steps, 30, 40 calories, maybe even more. Like if, you know, for, you know, jump on a bike, say, you know, 20 minutes, you probably do around, again, size of the individual does play a bit of a role here as well, but you could probably burn at least 200 to 250 calories within 20 to 30 minutes. So you're looking at probably almost more than two times, you know what I mean? Like almost 2.5 times the amount of calories in a short window, provided your heart rate's high enough. Versus, you know, obviously, because, you know, how many times do you see coaches prescribing 15,000 steps a day, 18,000 steps a day?
I've
Like,
seen it a
if
lot.
you're actually doing that, you're out there fucking on the pavement all day. Like, I don't know about you, but I don't have time to be out there fucking stepping all day. You know what I mean? Like, it's just way too many steps, and I'd rather do the time trade-off to just get the cardio done in, you know, a quarter of the time as it would take me to get all those steps in.
And look, a little bit of cardio is not a bad thing. It's good for you.
Even from a cardiovascular standpoint, like people shit on cardio and all the rest of it, but you know, there's a direct link between, you know, obviously doing multiple forms of cardio. And I think we also touched on, you know, I only really leveraged, you know, lists, right? So lists is low intensity, steady state there. Generally, you know, people will say, oh, can I go out for a run? I'm not a huge fan of running. Again, I don't mind it, but it also is quite taxing on the body. And it is
Right.
also one of those activities that you become very efficient at over time. So I also mentioned before efficiency of doing that cardio. I think whatever cardio modality you're doing, it's probably a good idea to maybe switch it up every 2 or 3 weeks, where maybe you're going from a bike to a cross trainer, maybe to the stairs. And you sort of just rotate through different forms of cardio because again, you will become more efficient at doing that exercise and that particular modality of cardio to the point where, you know, you might notice a bit more of a benefit and expend more calories and energy from changing it around.
Yeah. Good call. Good call. Um, yeah. So I think it's just what you want to do if you wanted to wrap it up into kind of like a strategy. We want to maximize the steps that we can do for the time that you have available. And then beyond that point, it's probably a good idea to add small amounts of cardio in.
Yeah.
If that's the route you're taking and not taking, you know, a calorie reduction standpoint. Um, what about refeeds, bro?
Mm. Refeeds. Yep. So,
Is this a strategy that you'll implement for a plateau?
look,
Question I get a lot.
yeah, so that's actually a good question because, you know, I think often people think these refeeds are these magical things, right? They think, you know, sometimes you'll throw in a refeed and then the next day or two your scale weight's down an exponential amount. And I think people often think that the refeed is what caused the drop. But the reality of the matter is it was probably the 2 weeks of dieting prior. It's just you were at a point now where, you know, cortisol was high, you know, you're probably retaining a bit of fluid and you've just added in some extra food, which has caused a reduction in stress. And you've actually actualized those losses on the scale. So I think refeeds do play a decent role in, you know, obviously we know the mental, you know, benefits of taking them. It gives you a bit of diet, you know, reprieve, like you can mentally switch off a bit, eat more food, but also from a performance standpoint as well. I think they're very an underrated tool in terms of being able to maintain performance in the gym, in potentially having them on like maybe your harder training days or around your harder training days, you know, to facilitate a bit of extra recovery. So I think the way I tend to use refeeds when it comes to setting up like a diet is I will go at it a couple of different ways. So either I will do an individual where they have consistent refeeds. If there's someone who loses weight very quickly and I'm almost looking to slow that weight loss down a bit, I will start to add in maybe one refeed, maybe two refeeds a week. Probably usually just start at one and then obviously assess from there. That refeed day will usually be about an extra maybe 125 grams of carbs, extra 150 grams of carbs up on baseline from where their low days are. The other circumstance is I feel if someone has a lot of fat to lose, right? That might be for the leaner individual, maybe only got 10 kilos to lose, like we talked about before. The other individual that maybe has to lose 40 or 50 kilos, refeeds are just going to slow their progress down, right? So they already have so much fat to lose. They're not really required. They already have so much to pull from internally already in terms of, burning adipose tissue, body fat, etc. So for this individual, more or less, the way I like to structure it is I might even do, say, 8 weeks at a time, 8 to 10 weeks. When they've lost or they've been dieting aggressively in a deficit for 8 to 10 weeks and things are going really well, because often these guys, they might get to that 8 week mark and they still feel fine. Like, they're maybe relatively detrained because they've already been overweight. But then I like to incorporate more of like a 7 day refeed, right? Or a diet break. So that's when I'll have someone, again, go all the way back up to maintenance for an entire week. And I think that for that person, because I feel like the person who's really overweight, they need motivation of the scale weight to lose these big amounts of weight. They need to see these changes weekly.
Yeah.
So I think it's much easier to see those transient changes in scale weight if you're not adding in refeeds consistently and you're able to keep them in a deficit for a long period of time. That does wonders for their confidence and their motivation as they're going through a diet. So for that guy, I like to do refeeds like 7 day refeeds every 8 to 10 weeks. So there'll be no weekly refeeds, especially in that first half of the diet. Maybe towards the back end when it's the last 10, we might switch it to more so like the first individual.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think, look, more specifically when it comes to plateaus, if you have been seeing a plateau for 2 weeks, in all the circumstances that we just mentioned, that would define a plateau. What I will usually do, if I haven't done it recently, like within a month, 2 months, whatever, is I will give a refeed and see if it is just more of a plateau due to stress response.
Yeah.
Give them a 2 to 3 day refeed. Like what I usually do when I give my clients refeeds is I'll give them a refeed. I get them to send me their weight the days every day after. And then after the 2 days, I also get them to send, if it's 2 or 3 days. So I get them to send me their weight every day after. That will dictate if I want to give a third day. And then I'll also get them to take photos after it's finished. And then we will assess together what we're going to do from that point. So if it is a stress response, because I don't think we really touched on this when we talked about plateaus, but sometimes it is just a stress response that is making you hold your weight on the scales. Okay.
And even psychologically, like you said, that's a great way to approach it because like you're like, okay, well, they've been sticking to their diet, they've been doing all of this over the last sort of 2 weeks. Even psychologically now, they can start to think, like they can start to stress as well because the scale weight's not shifting. So there's no real harm to just giving them a couple of days or 2 or 3 days of higher food, which, often that will actually yield some really good progress. And that way it really does allow you to see what's exactly happened here in terms of the variables. Like, are they actually plateaued to the point that they need a change? And I'll often do that as well, where it's like, even if maybe they have had a plateau or whatever, and I have some refeeds, I'll use that as a bridge into making a change anyway.
That's
So
exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. So I'll either do that and just see if I think their calories are right, and I just have a suspicion that it is a stress response why the scale's not moving, or while we're not seeing any changes that we want to see. I'll give the refeed. If the weight drops, then it's all good. But oftentimes when I've got my heart set on making a change, so say I know I want to give this person a reduction in calories, say I want to reduce 200 calories, what I'll often do is say, hey, this week in these 2 days, we're going to do a refeed of whatever 150 grams of carbs extra on the both days. And then straight after that, we're going to move into these new calories, because I think it creates a little bit more, even more of a disparity when you do drop them, which can often create just kind of bust them through that plateau. Because often the extra calories don't really cause weight gain a lot of the time if it's done right. It's not like too much or whatever. I think a lot of time, if you've been in a deficit for a good period of time, the body's going to take up those calories very, very well. And then on the back of that, if you're going into a drop even from what they were doing before, often that can just get them to kind of like get their weight dropping like where you want it essentially. And then from there, like you can follow up for that week if you want to keep the calories where you've adjusted them to. Often, sometimes I bring them actually back up, but it
Tends to
just
be
depends
the
on the person.
motility of it too. So like we said before, sometimes digestion can be a little bit poor,
Yeah,
whatever. Refeed, speed up gastric motility, and finally they're starting to go to the toilet more frequently, and you can see these big drops in the scale from all the work they've done in the previous weeks. And like you said before, the art of coaching, exactly what you've just said there is not something that someone who is not experienced as a coach would know how to do. They just think the only tool they've got in the box is decrease calories, increase cardio. Like
and
they
you
don't
don't
realize the art
always
of
need to
coaching.
decrease calories for. It's not. It might not be that decrease. Might only be a very short decrease.
Yeah.
Then you go back up to the where they were originally. Like you don't need to keep like if you get through the plateau, and then if you're able to bring the calories back up another 100 or 200 off the back of that decrease and continue to see progress beyond that point, because yeah, metabolism is a funny thing, bro. It's we have a lot of studies, but the fine art of this stuff
There's an art
and the
form. There
response
really
that
is.
an individual has, it's you can't study an individual's response to nutrition. You can
Yeah,
study
you have
large
to go broad
cohort.
strokes, but then you have to be able to take all that. And I love the term evidence based, and I can't remember where I heard this, but like obviously science based and evidence based. I think evidence based takes into consideration all of your skill set of what you have seen work over the years, as well as the scientific evidence.
Mm.
So I think combining those two things together, that really is like the art and science of coaching mixed into one, which is such a it's yeah that's really what separates I think people being able to get results.
Yeah, 100%. Well, I think we've covered that well and truly. What do you think?
Yeah, that's solid. That's good.
Should probably do. Well, I think eventually we'll I think we'll dive deeper into refeeds because I think it's a good topic on another podcast. But I think that was a good just gave that some good coverage anyway. All right,
Good.
we're gonna move to some questions. You got anything else to say on that?
Yeah, that's perfect. That's good.
All right, let's finish off with some questions, bro. We've got some good ones here actually. All right. Question number one: How aggressive can you go calorie wise on a mini cut, and for how long as a natty without looking like a melted candle by the end of the cut?
Yeah, so I think generally with most mini cuts I probably start somewhere in the ballpark of like maybe like a 30 to 35, maybe even 40% decrease
Yep.
on where their intake has previously been. So I think, look, if you're looking at it in terms of, whether or not you're natty, whether or not you're enhanced, etc. I mean, yeah, if you're enhanced, you'll probably be able to handle going a bit more aggressive because you've got, a bit of assistance there. But in the short term, it really doesn't matter that much. The difference is natty enhanced is probably enhanced guy long term can lose fat a bit faster, right? And have a bigger deficit. Whereas obviously the natural guy, to retain muscle, he needs to ensure that he's not dieting too hard. So I think most mini cuts, if you're keeping them short and aggressive, somewhere in the ballpark of say 4 to 6 weeks, I would say you probably want to be seeing a loss of around about 1 to maybe 1.5 kilos per week. So, whereas before, obviously, if it's more long term, 0.5 to 1, that'll slow as you go through a diet. But with the mini cut, you want to stay aggressive. So, if you get to the first week and maybe your calculations were a bit incorrect, maybe you pull out say 700 or 800 calories from like your baseline diet that you're already on, and maybe that yields a good amount the first week. The second week, maybe it's only like 500 grams. Do not be scared to add in some extra cardio to drop the calories quite lower to get that going, because the more aggressive the diet, the less sustainable it's supposed to be. So, obviously the faster it is, it's essentially fast in, fast out. So I would say a good starting point would be, yeah, like I said, probably 30 to 40% pull out of like, calories from where your baseline is. That might translate to anywhere from 700 to even 1,000 calories in some instances if your calories are up really high. But you want to be more or less in that range of probably somewhere between 1 to 1.5 kilos of loss per week.
Yep, agree. So yeah, I think in the scheme of things, 4 weeks is not going to be. You're not going to be at risk of losing muscle. We've got protein in the right spot. We've got training stimulus. Um, a large reduction in calories for a short period of time is not going to really be, you're not going to be at risk of losing muscle. If we were to extend that for a long period of time, yes, that might become a problem later on. But because the mini cut is so short, I mean, if you're choosing to do a shorter, a more aggressive mini cut, then I think you'll find that you'll be fine. You're not gonna look like a melted candle. So
Well, yeah, like I guess you could even go even further on that, and you could go for something like Lyle McDonald's rapid fat loss, which is like 2 or 3 weeks of like. But look, I'm just not really a fan of that for most natties. It's really hard. It's unsustainable. It's really unsustainable. Um, I'm just not a huge fan of it for most people. It
I
can
just
be done,
think I think you run into a cap of fat loss
definitely. Yeah.
on a weekly basis. So it's like you're just
You just hate life, like training shit. Everything just sucks. So it's like even a mini cut, it's still manageable. Like you can still, your calories are still high enough that you're still enjoying what you're doing. But usually, like with the mini cut as well, I think it's imperative you're starting it from a point where your calories are really high. Because if you're just like, maybe you just finished dieting like 10 weeks ago and you had gone through a little 10-week gaining phase, but now you're like, oh, I need a mini cut. Your calories are probably not really high enough, and you shouldn't have accumulated enough body fat in that time frame to actually warrant a mini cut. So I think even the timing of them, you probably shouldn't be doing any more than 2 a year
yeah.
maximum.
I think they're overused largely
Yeah,
by people.
definitely.
Very overused due to the fact that people don't gain properly.
Yeah, the game too quick, too aggressive, put on
They
too
hate
much
the way
fat.
they look, and then they revert to the mini cart.
Yeah.
It's like the male version of what females do. They don't do it with the gaining phases. They do it like they gain a little bit of weight and then they want to get it off straight away, and they're always just finding themselves in a deficit. I think that's like the male version of that.
Yeah.
All right, next question. I believe I can get test E off trustworthy gym doctors. Yes or no, if not wanting to go through a clinic. Oh wow, this is a bit of I need a bit more details on this, to be honest.
Look, I mean, I don't know what a gym doctor is like.
Gym doctor.
Is he if he's practicing medicine, he will lose his license for doing that. So I'm assuming he's actually not a doctor. So let's just avoid the fact that he's a doctor and it's just some bro that's in the gym, right? So again, number one, to go through a clinic, it's also very difficult because like the ranges in terms of like obviously the amount that's required to prescribe TRT is relatively low. So I would say, fuck, I mean, long term as well. I think if you're looking at the safety of what you're using, I think you're probably better off going through a clinic long term if it's going to be just for replacement. Because again, some of the things you don't really know where these things are being made. You don't know where they're manufactured. Some bikies bathtub. The heavy metals that obviously accumulate that you are used in the oils as well. So I think long term, if you're going to be using this as a TRT, you're always better off going through a clinic and getting yourself sorted with a prescription as well.
Yeah, I think. Look, let's be honest. Look,
You know what a gym doctor is, bro? Have you heard?
I've never heard of a gym doctor, but look. Being honest, we all know that people take performance enhancing drugs, so we're not here to say don't do it, do whatever. If this is an instance where it's your test is not low, you're not eligible for TRT, and this is more of a performance enhancing situation, dude, just make sure you understand how to do things safely. That's the most important thing. Safe use.
Know what you're getting yourself into, for
Yeah.
starters.
A lot
Like,
of time people are just
gym
taking steroids, don't know what to monitor. Like the data tracking stuff that we just spoke about for plateaus. There's certain things that you need to monitor if you are taking performance enhancing drugs, and a lot of people just don't know what the fuck they're doing.
yeah,
So
nor
they're
can be fucked as well of actually doing that. So, like, a clinic will force you to do these things to maintain your prescription. So, I think long term, going with the clinic, provided, like you said, it is prescribed TRT, is always going to be the best alternative for you. Because again, if you're asking this question, bro, you need a clinic. I'm telling you.
but what if it's not a situation where what if someone's wanting to go super physiological?
Yeah, well, I
Because
mean,
obviously that's not going to be warrant, like a TRT doctor is not going to take them to that place. Okay, they're going to take
that's
them essentially into the high normal ranges. But if this person's wanting to put on some serious mass. He wants to go super physiological. He wants to take test D, maybe 1 or 2 meals a week, whatever it is.
Yeah.
What are maybe we can give some, I mean, not, this is not doctor's advice, but what things should people be looking at
Yeah.
if they are wanting to do a cycle? Because look, let's be honest, people are doing it. There's fucking so many people on steroids, dude. I didn't actually realize this, but because I train in my gym. There's like, I'm in a private situation where I don't see many like public gym goers.
Wasn't until you come up. Yeah.
When I went to your gym and when I've been to the muscle cities and the shit here, dude, like everyone is using gear. It's
Yeah.
actually humorous. Like, it's actually funny how many people are on gear.
Yeah. It's
So
great.
with that, like, what do you think people should be looking at?
Yeah, so I definitely think you want to, number one, ask, you really need to know what you're getting yourself in for, which is in a majority of cases, it's probably going to be a lifetime commitment. You know what I mean? Like a lot of the time, people are under the illusion, oh, it's just one cycle or whatever it may be.
They want to gain size, then get off and maintain the size. That's the thing I hear like so much.
Yeah. The reality is, like, yeah, you might maintain a bit of what you put on from the first one, but outside of that, it's always going to be more. You're always going to want more. So it's a case of, I think first and foremost, you need to ensure you're getting blood work done, regular blood work, especially before, so you know what you sort of your baseline is. You make obviously regular blood work that you're keeping an eye on, or you have a doctor that's keeping an eye on, particularly your cardiovascular function. So you're getting regular echocardiograms done. I would probably get a calcium score. And then also, in terms of your blood panel, the main things that you would want to be just keeping an eye on, number one, like testosterone, because at the end of the day, a lot of this shit, if it's from this random gym doctor, can be faked, right?
Yeah.
So you need to ensure what you're getting is actually what you're getting. So testosterone, estrogen, definitely like your red blood cell count, hematocrit, your liver enzymes, your ALT, AST, your bilirubin. You need to be making sure that all of these things are not blowing out of range, and they're obviously staying within a good place. So that's probably just like the base things that I would recommend. Obviously there's go into additional things with supplementation and things like that in terms of preventative
Blood pressure.
health.
You mentioned
But
say blood
what's
pressure?
that?
Did you
Yeah,
say
taking blood pressure. Yeah, blood pressure as well. Regular blood pressure readings, because like we've said, when you are making that change, especially going to sort of a super physiological range, that's when you really start to notice like increases in blood pressure. And we know every sort of 10-point increase in blood pressure can reduce your life expectancy significantly. So
and
sort of
you don't even feel any different?
no, and that's the thing. That's why it's such a silent killer, especially among bodybuilders. Like a lot of these deaths, the cardiovascular health and things of that nature can be attributed to probably long-term high elevated blood pressure, in some degree. So it's definitely a case that you need to firstly understand. So it might even be more beneficial to just even start with a clinic, and then they can tell you exactly what needs to be tracked and give you more information, all those things, and you can actually work with a doctor and get more information so you know what you're getting into from going from physiological to super physiological. Because I think that the education around that's such an important component.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So just do your research, make sure you know what you're doing, make sure you know what the effects are, what the long-term effects are going to
That
be.
question tells me that we're not really sure what
Yeah,
we're doing. You know what I mean? Like,
the gym doctor. I love
who's the
that.
gym doctor, bro? I don't know who this gym doctor is.
All right, next question. Was flying last year, had great progress. I've had 8 weeks off due to holiday and nagging injury. Can't find motivation whatsoever. Any suggestions?
Um, yeah. So obviously, coming back from a holiday is always a tricky one because I think you just have to start, man. Like that first week back, it sucks for everyone. Like you just have to, as soon as you get back, I think it's the first thing I like to do when I come back from like a holiday is get my nutrition in check. So if I can get my nutrition in check and I can go and train as soon as I can, I automatically want to get everything back in all my ducks in a row. So you just have to get one day, turn it into two, turn it into three, right? And at the end of the day, we've said it time and time again, it's not going to come down to the motivation to do this because we've said this before, motivation, you might want to train half the time. You know what I mean? Like, and that might even be when you're in a deep deficit, that might even be 25% of the time. So you really have to override that motivation and just understand that the discipline is what's going to keep you there long term. So just get started, man. There is no real secret. There's no real trick to getting that motivation back. You just need to start stacking some good days together. You stack a good week together, you stack a good month together, and before you know it, that's 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, 12 months, a year.
I could relate to this question so much because, like I said at the start of the podcast, my month has been shit.
Yeah.
Been sick. I went on holidays myself. I've come back. I trained on Friday. Had zero motivation, bro. Everything felt heavy. Everything was just hard.
The first session sucks, eh? No matter who you
Dude.
are, the first session fucking sucks.
Then trained yesterday, was a little bit better, but still, I'm still largely unmotivated. But I just know that once I start stacking up days and just like, especially when you're sick, dude, when you come back, because you just feel so weak and everything just feels really like, when you lift heavy weight and the hardness feels good.
Yeah, it's like there's something that happens, especially neurally as well, like where you have this connection with the muscle.
Yeah,
Like that central nervous system is more, it's not as dampened, and you're able to really like produce a lot of force, but not only produce force, not like you're just lifting the weight, but you have a really good connection with the target muscle. It often happens to me as well when I come back from a deload where I've had maybe 4 or 5 days off.
yes.
That first session back's never really, I'm going to be blowing numbers out of the water. You know what I mean? Like even with the way that it feels when I'm lifting the weight, you just have to get through that shitty period. Unfortunately, that's the only way.
Yeah. So I just know once I stack up a week of consistent training, consistent nutrition, I'm going to be back into the zone and feeling good. So
Or hire us and get a coach.
yeah, I just don't worry about the motivation at that point because look, and this is the thing because we spoke about, I think it was like 2 podcasts ago, we talked about for people who don't train, they don't understand how beneficial training is for the energy of their day, for just their moods and whatever it is. It's very, very powerful thing. And I think I can see that like coming back after a holiday, after being sick, it's just like a pain in the ass to train at the moment. It just feels like.
Like you
So
can
it's like,
easily see how people fall into these traps of like, can't be fucked now. Like, it just doesn't feel the same. And then that week becomes a month, becomes 2 months, becomes 6 months.
yeah,
Like very quickly you can see how you can fall out of the habit, I guess, of training.
once you start seeing the improvements, the progress, your motivation will come back. That largely motivation comes from when you are making good progress, like a lot of the time. So, um, just yeah, like Chris said, you just got to do it. Once you're a week or two into it, you've been consistent, you start to see the benefits of it, mood, energy, progress, your motivation will come back. I guarantee you.
And are you happy to sit there and think each week I'm not training? Are you happy to sit there and think that's a week I'm actually taking a backward step?
Yeah, more. You're going further.
So, I mean, are you happy to sit there and have that? Because not normally people won't think about that. They'll just think this is hard. But are you actually happy to sit there and undo all of your hard work that you put in 8 weeks of solid work already for? So,
Yeah, exactly. All right, next question. Testosterone for a 50-year-old male who has low T, 9.2. Just want to feel good around TRT dose, not too high.
yeah, so I think we sort of covered this with the clinic question.
Yep.
That range is probably still not clinically significant enough to warrant supplementation sort of through a clinic. So look, I think far too often people will like gravitate towards that without necessarily looking at any of their lifestyle factors first and foremost.
Oh,
So again, it should be like a last point of call. You know what I mean? Like if you should be trying to maximize all of your other variables first and foremost. So it's like, can you sit there and say, I'm training hard 3 to 5 times a week? Am I eating enough protein? Am I, getting enough rest? Am I sleeping well enough? Am I hydrated enough? Am I consuming a wide variety of, micronutrition and meat, meat proteins, etc. And are you doing all of these things before you feel like that's necessary? Because you could see a marginal increase in your testosterone production without needing to use something else. Obviously, coming up at 50, again, a genuine question you do have to ask yourself if this is a commitment that you want for the rest of your life as well. Because one of the things that we do see, and this is the reason that, as we get older, we lose muscle, right? Like sarcopenia and muscle wastage is the thing, because obviously the older that you get, the less and less muscle you have past a point. So it's actually the body trying to downsize because now there's less stress on, the cardiovascular system and all these things. So coming up on 50, you probably have to ask yourself the question again, do you want the rest of your lifetime commitment? And is it going to be probably the best thing for you, long term when you're probably at an age, I would say probably past like 55, 60, where do you really want to have your testosterone that high in the first place?
Yeah. Yeah, it's a hard one. You need to kind of I think you're right. You need to ask yourself that question of what you want for your life and if it's gonna change your life.
It's not something you've ever done before. Like if this is just completely new, like 9 point whatever is not super, super low. Again, we don't know what his free testosterone is here, but again, 9 point whatever is not like super, super low.
Mm, yeah, interesting one. What do you need to qualify for TRT? Hello.
I think it's like under 4 or 5 now.
Yeah.
Like they keep reducing the bracket to qualify people, which again, and this is also a double-edged sword too, because some people genuinely, as testosterone comes down, we do see an increase in like, suicide rates of men and whatnot as they do age. Um, for that exact reason, right? Like you lose your drive, you lose your innate ability to want to, really get after life. So, and some people might be dealing with, anxiety and all these different things, which provided you're putting in the work in all areas, like, your mental health and all those areas, it can definitely help improve the quality of your life. So again, you have to ask yourself what you want to get out of your life and also how you're actually feeling. Because at the end of the day, if you feel fine, like you probably don't really need it. Like, unless of course you're someone that, probably has, maybe greater physique goals or whatever it is. But, 50, 55, 60, when I'm that age, like I don't even really know if I'd warrant it as being worth it unless I actually need it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. It's a bit of a tough one because yeah, look, say he is doing everything correctly. Like it is genuinely the number has come down, and I think it's a comparison thing as well. It's like if you were 20 or 15, your number was 15 and then it has reduced and you do feel much lower energy wise and just
Because that quality of life is important as well. Yeah. So like I said, I'm not saying to not go down that pathway, but at least exhaust for, at least 6 months or whatever, the other options that you've got, because far too often, no one's got those other variables in play before they're just like, they eat meat pies and fucking monsters for breakfast.
yeah.
And now they just want to add in some TRT for the sake of it. You've got to
Gotta,
have all those variables dialed in first and foremost, and then determine whether or not it's something that you really, really want to pursue.
yeah. Um, what are some pet hates that clients do?
So I think my biggest pet hate would be, not going to name any names here. So I think my biggest pet hate would be if we have set a plan and that individual takes it upon themselves to start giving themselves like refeeds or things that have gone off plan and then not tell me what the fuck they have done. Because then I come back the next week and it's like, oh, well, scale weight hasn't shifted. Like, what's going on here? And I'm trying to rack my brain with all the variables, but they're doing shit that they haven't told me. And they've added in a refeed and somehow justified it to themselves the fact that they needed it. When the reality of the situation is, we had a plan put in place. If I wanted you to take a refeed, I would have given you one, based on everything we've just discussed in this podcast. I probably think that's my biggest pet hate. Yeah, people doing shit that I have not prescribed for them would probably be it, and not being open in terms of their communication around what they've done.
Yeah.
You make a mistake. That's like everyone makes a mistake. That's not what I'm talking about here. It's like they've somehow justified it to themselves that you've obviously come to me to get coached. You come to me for me to employ, certain methods and whatnot. But then you started taking things upon yourself to really, just do whatever the fuck giving yourself an excuse to do whatever the fuck you wanted to do in the first place.
Yeah. Mine is similar. Mine is more for like prep competitors.
That could be related to prep too.
Couple is I've been prepping a client for a show, and then when you're doing a show and you go to a gym, people start to give you advice on what you should be doing for your.
Oh, fuck, this is a
So
good
when
one.
the big steroid guy at the gym starts giving your client advice, and then they start taking that advice and not listening to what they're actually meant to be doing, and the advice is always so fucking stupid, bro. Um, that is what I hate. And this is even more magnified during peak week.
Oh yeah, because like you could have someone in such good shape,
Yes.
and like
Happened to
they're
me.
like, oh, the big guy at the gym told me to fucking cut water, or to just
Yeah.
or told me to load sodium or load potassium, and you already have a plan in place for this person, and they go and do something just completely fucking random.
So stupid, bro. And it happens with women a lot as well, dude. They yeah, just do dumb shit in peak week because they see their friends doing other shit that are being prepped by other coaches or
Yeah.
whatever it is, and they just don't stick to the plan and they completely fuck themselves up.
I'll just say this: prep clients can be some of the most difficult clients that you'll ever work with, simply because yeah, they just can be so easily influenced by dumb shit.
And
Like
there's a lot of folklore out there around preps and peaking and all this all
I
bullshit.
always have the same saying that and then I probably really only had one bad prepping experience where I prepped a client, but every other experience has been pretty damn positive. But yeah, like it just can be so easily influenced, and it's just one of those things where yeah, it can derail an entire prep if things are not done the way that they should be, or the way that you have put your methods towards them.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's do one more. Wanting to do a comp this year, but also want to travel and have fun. How long on average would you set aside to prep for a client for a comp?
I guess it depends what you want to get out of the contest prep, because if you're coming in and you're someone that has aspirations to be placing well and probably be in, a top three or be in a first call out, or you're just someone who wants to be there to make up the numbers, because you got to ask yourself the question, are your competitors that you're going to be competing against taking a holiday? No, they're not. I guarantee the person who's winning that first place trophy is probably not taking a holiday. You know what I mean? Like you have to ask yourself what is important to you. So look, I think you'd be better off probably just pushing your show back, doing your holiday, then being able to give yourself a good time to improve in terms of whatever needs to be improved in terms of your
All the
physique.
time people think that the prep is just the actual fat loss.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because that happens so often. It's like people don't realize that the progress you make is actually in the off season. It's in the improvement phase. It's in the building phase. It's not, yeah, you look better during a prep because you pulled off a bit of body fat, but the physique is not built during prep.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just conditioned during prep, but it's built in that off season, that gaining phase.
So if you're taking holidays and going around the world and drinking and all this sort of thing in the time that you're actually meant to be making the improvements and the progress before the actual fat loss part of the comp prep starts, then yeah, you're not going to be.
It sounds like this individual's like just planning on going on holiday and then coming back and going straight into prep.
Yeah.
Like I would personally, as a coach, I would never prep someone. Like I just would say no. Well, I
Yeah.
would say, okay, let's pick a show the following year and then give ourselves a good, probably 8 to 12 months of improvement before we go into a show. Because yeah, having that again, that honest conversation, saying to that person, you're not going to do it again. If you're happy to still do this,
What
that's
they
okay.
want out of it, yeah.
Depends what you want out of it. But if you're someone that genuinely has aspirations of doing well, and putting a physique on stage that's like elite, you're not going to be wanting to do that.
Yeah, I agree. All right, mate, let's wrap it up there. I
Beautiful.
think that's it. It's been, yeah, almost 2 hours, I think. So
Shit, 2 hours.
it went fast.
Yeah.
If you guys are interested in coaching, you can hit us up at strengthlabmelbourne.com.au. You can also follow us at strengthlabau and follow at Chris Black.
Coach underscore Chris Black.
Coach underscore Chris Black. I'll memorize that at one point. Coach
Yeah,
underscore Chris Black.
Spotify now as well. Spotify.
This is the other thing. Yeah. So this week, guys, all of our episodes will be on Spotify. Hopefully, I'm hoping. Luca, if you're rewatching this when you're editing it,
Oh, he's gonna cop it, bro. If we're not on
he's
Spotify
in
this
big
week,
trouble, bro.
heads on the chopping block.
I love putting his head on the chopping block. Yeah, so we're hoping to get our shit together and have everything on Spotify
Yep. So we'll be on YouTube, we'll be on Spotify, will we be on Apple?
And we'll be on Apple. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. So we'll be on all platforms, bro. You can't fucking jump on any platform and miss us.
You're gonna see us in every platform you open.
All right, Chrissy. Thanks a lot, my man. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Beautiful.